Hello, God bless everyone today. I'm Laurie with Spirit Warriors of Christ. Today, we're going to talk about archaeological evidence of the Bible. The following is an article and is adapted from the ESV Archeology Study Bible, a new study tool that roots biblical text in its culture and historical context. Let's go into some artifacts that have been found that prove the existence of the Bible. In 1978, Napoleon invaded Egypt. He brought with him a scientific team of scholars and draftsmen to survey the monuments of the land. The most important find of the expedition was the Rosetta Stone. It proved to be valuable as the key deciphering an Egyptian hieroglyphics. The stone dated to the period of Ptolemy, I believe that is, 204 to 180 BC, and was inscribed in three scripts: Demotic, Greek, and hieroglyphic. The Greek, well known to scholars at the time, proved to be a translation of the ancient Egyptian language on the stone. Translation of the hieroglyphics marked the beginning of the study of ancient Egyptian text and grammar and provided the basis for modern Egyptology studies. The second artifact is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Everyone who is interested in biblical studies knows about the Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, shepherds stumbled upon a cave in a rugged, arid area on the western side of the Dead Sea. What they discovered was soon proclaimed the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century. Over the next few years, other similar remote caves in the area were found. What did these caves contain? Over 800 fragmentary documents, mainly consisting of Hebrew writings on leather, with a few on parchment, including fragments of 190 biblical scrolls. Most of these are small, containing no more than 1/10 of a book. However, a complete Isaiah scroll has been found. Almost every OT book is present, and there are also other writings valued by the community that dwelt in those caves. It appears the earliest scrolls date to the mid-3rd century BC, and most to the 1st or 2nd centuries BC. Perhaps the greatest contribution of this find is to our understanding of the transmission of the biblical text. It is encouraging to note that the differences are minimal between the OT texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls and various editions of the Hebrew texts produced 1,000 years later and used today, involving the smallest textual details. The meaning of the text itself is not affected by these differences. The third find is the Tel Dan inscription. In 1993, excavators at Tel Dan uncovered an inscription with the word I don't know how to pronounce this. It's Bytdwd, if anyone knows what that word is, on it. They convincingly argued that the word means House of David and dates to the 19th century BC. The inscription had been sealed by a later Assyrian destruction, later firmly dated to 733 to 722 BC. An ash layer is an archaeologist's dream. Anything sealed beneath it must be dated earlier because there is no possibility of intrusion by later artifacts. Pottery directly beneath the destruction level dates to the 9th and 8th century BC. And from this period, the so-called House of David inscription must have come. Although some scholars have attempted to explain away the inscription by asserting the Bytdwd is either a place name or a designation for a temple of a deity, it probably refers to the house of lineage of David, the second king of the United Monarchy, and arguably the most significant ruler in the history of Israel. Additional evidence is the likely appearance of the term Bytdwd. On the Meshistela Moabite stone, also dating to the 19th century BC. Sorry, some of these names I can't not pronounce. But then I am not Jewish and do not read Hebrew. The Kotef Hinnom scrolls is the next item. In 1979, Israeli archaeologist Gabriel Barkey was excavating a burial cave at Kotef Hinnom, just southwest of Jerusalem. The tomb was a typical late Iron Age, basically dating 7th century BC, burial structure. The typical Judean burial at this time took place in a rock-cut cave. When a person died, he was placed on a burial bench in the tomb, along with personal items such as vases, jewelry, or trinkets. Once the body decayed, the bones of the person were placed in a box beneath the burial bench. When the team began to excavate the box, they came upon 2 small silver scrolls. Since the scrolls were metal, the archaeologists had a difficult time unrolling and deciphering their texts. They began with a larger of the 2 scrolls, which took 3 years to unroll. When they unrolled it, it measured only 3 inches, basically 7.6 centimeters long. When they finished, they noticed the scroll was covered with very delicately etched characters. The first word they were able to decipher was the name Yahuwah. After much work, they were able to read the entire scroll. It contained the priestly benediction from number 6. The smaller scroll also contained the benediction from number 6. It took so long to unroll and decipher the scrolls that the material was not published until 1989. These 2 scrolls are relatively unknown, but they can be seen today in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. They are the earliest known citations of biblical text in Hebrew. They predate the earliest Dead Sea Scrolls by more than 400 years and are thus helpful in matters of textual criticism. Many authors have argued that the priestly benediction was written after the exile, with its earliest date from the 4th century BC. Now we have physical examples of the benediction from the late 7th century BC. In addition, the discovery of 2 plagues with the same benediction in a buried site underscores the centrality of the priestly benediction to the religion of the Israelites. Number 5, the Moabite stone. In 1968, a missionary in Jerusalem found a stone tablet for sale that appeared to be from ancient times. The sellers broke the tablet into a number of pieces to sell them, one at a time, to make more money. Fortunately, a copy of the tablet was made prior to the break of this copy. On the tablet is a text written in Moabite dating to the 9th century BC. It was perhaps a victory stone erected by King Mesha to commemorate his military achievements. The text begins, "I am Mesha, son of Shemesh, king of Moab." Sorry, can't read that. Prominent in the text is the king's version of a war fought with Israel in 850 BC, in which Moab revolted against King Joram of the northern kingdom of Israel soon after the death of Ahab. Of particular interest is that the Bible records the same incident in 2 Kings 3. The 2 accounts differ in perspective. Mesha emphasizes his victories over Israel in capturing cities under Israelite control. The biblical writer, to the contrary, highlights Israel's successful counterattacks against the Moabites. Number 6, The Lachish Ladders. In the 1930s, J.L. Starkey excavated the site of Lachish. He discovered a layer of debris heavily destroyed and burned with fire at the hands of the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar in 589 or 588 BC. Starkey unearthed 18 ostraca in the burnt debris of the guard room between the inner and outer gates of the city. An ostracon is an inscription written in ink on pottery sherds. Most of the ostraca were correspondence, although a few were lists of names. The contexts of the ostraca were fragmentary, and only a third of them are sufficiently preserved to be intelligible. The date of the ostraca is generally immediately prior to the destruction of Lachish by the Babylonians. A number of letters are written by a man named Hoshea to a military commander named Yosh. The common interpretation is that Yoshia was the commander of a fortress outside Lachish, writing to Yosh, the high commander of Lachish. Other commentators believe Hoshea was the military chief of Lachish and Yosh was a high official. One of the letters closes with the statement, "Let my Lord know that we are watching for the signals of Lachish, according to all the indications which my Lord hath given. For we cannot see Ezekiah." Hoshea was referring to the signal fires from one Judean city to another, and the content appears to be Babylonian assault soon to come. To be the Babylonian assault soon to come. And the seventh item on the list, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In 1872, George Smith announced he had discovered an Assyrian account of a flood among tablets stored in the British Museum from excavations of mid-7th century BC. Nevea called the Epic of Gilgamesh. The story comprises 12 tablets, with one tablet containing a tale of great deluge. The hero of the flood, a man named, oh boy, here's one of those words again, Utnapishtim, relates an episode to Gilgamesh. He explains how the god Ea warned him about an approaching judgment and told him to build a boat to save his life from the watery onslaught. As the tale unfolds, the epic, in some respects, is nearly identical to the biblical narrative of Noah in Genesis 6 through 9. This discovery created quite a stir among the biblical scholars of the 19th century, and even today, scholars continue to puzzle over and debate the obvious parallels between the two. And the eighth, Hezekiah's Tunnel. The most dependable water source for the city of Jerusalem during the Israelite settlement was the Gihon Spring. However, its location outside the city walls was problematic. During an attack or siege, the inhabitants were cut off from their vital water source. In 1867, explorer Charles Warren discovered a vertical shaft cut through bedrock, allowing the people of Jerusalem to reach the waters of the Gihon Spring from behind the city walls. This shaft was probably built originally by the Jebusites, and may be how David's soldiers captured the city from them, which is found in 2 Samuel 5, 6 through 8. A new water system employing part of the earlier one was built by Hezekiah near the end of the 8th century BC. Due to an Assyrian military threat, Hezekiah's tunnel sloped gently away from the Gihon Spring to allow water to flow from it to the pool of Siloam inside the city walls. Hezekiah's tunnel was cut by two teams digging toward each other from opposite ends. It was not chiseled in a straight line, but was serpentine due to fragment shifts in terrain. The two teams made adjustments as they drew near each other and heard the picks of the other team. An inscription 20 feet, which is 6 meters, from the Siloam pool has been discovered that describes the meeting of the two cutting teams. Number 9. Crucified man at Givat Hamavatar. We are well aware of the Roman methods of crucifixion of the 1st century AD, not only from written records, but also from the remains of a crucified man discovered at Givat Hamavatar, a site just outside of Jerusalem. The cross consisted of two parts: the upright bar, called the stipes, crucis, and the horizontal bar, called the pedipal. I can't say that word. Sorry. According to archaeologists, the nails must have been driven through the wrist because the palms could not have supported the man's weight. He was affixed to the cross also by his feet, in a way different from what is commonly thought. The Roman executioner made a crude, rectangular frame of wood in which the heels of the victim were pressed. Then an iron nail was driven through the right part of the frame, through the man's calcanea, the largest tarsal bones in the foot, and then through the left part of the frame. The free end of the nail was then bent by hammer blows. This find gives archaeologists further insight into Roman crucifixions. And number 10, the last item on the list of evidence for the Bible. Bear with me, Agaritic texts. Not sure that's how that's pronounced. A great majority of Canaanite texts come from the sites of Ugarit, modern day Ras Shamara, on the northern coast of Syria along the Mediterranean Sea. It was a prominent Canaanite state of the 2nd millennium BC. Major excavations have taken place at the site since 1929. A most important find at the site are hundreds of texts discovered in the palace and the temple areas. More than 1,500 of those tablets have been published. Ugarit reached its height in the 15th to 13th centuries BC, the period in which written literature at the site flourished. The city met its final fate at the hands of the Mediterranean enemies, who destroyed the site around 1200 BC. The importance of the Ugaritic texts is the material they provide concerning Canaanite religion. Their mythic texts help us understand the religious context of the OT, including many parallels between Canaanite and Israelite religion practices. In addition, the languages of Ugaritic and Hebrew are quite similar, and thus Ugaritic provides insight into the development and grammar of Hebrew. And that is what I have for you on archaeology, evidence of the Bible through archaeology. So I hope you'll forgive me for butchering things, but you know, some of these words are hard to pronounce, and I have no background in Hebrew or any of the Middle Eastern languages. So, anyway, I hope you got something out of that. If you have any comments or questions, you can message me at Lori at spiritwarriorsofchrist.com, and I will do my utmost best to answer your questions. So, thank you for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.